The emergency alarms blared as Commander Elijah Knox stood in the heart of the United Earth Fleet's command center. A mass of holographic projections swirled around him, battle reports, fleet movements, and casualty updates from across the galaxy. The room buzzed with the harsh tension of a war that had been dragging on for decades, but Elijah remained still, his expression unwavering. "Commander, they're closing in on the outer defenses." Captain Mara Kessler's voice crackled through the communication panel, her words sharp, urgent. "I know." Elijah's gaze remained fixed on the central hologram, Earth's last bastion, New Washington, encircled by the Gorther fleet like vultures preparing to feast. The light from distant stars flickered against the dark expanse, but nothing felt further from hope than this moment. The battle had stretched humanity's strength to its breaking point, and now, it seemed like it was about to break altogether. "Where's the rest of the fleet?" "Most are still engaged at the Zeta Quadrant, sir," Kessler replied. "The Gorther know we're stretched thin. If they push forward now, we'll lose everything," Elijah finished for her, the weight of his words sinking in. His mind raced as he remembered the briefing from earlier that day. This was the critical moment, the tipping point in the war, and the fate of humanity rested on something that had long been thought a myth. Hidden deep within humanity's past, buried by time and loss, was the key to turning everything around. It was a weapon of unimaginable power, power that could challenge the Gorther Empire's reign. But only if they could find it. "Elijah." General Alice Liu's voice cut through the static, her tone commanding. "I've just received confirmation. The data is valid. The weapon, it's real." Elijah stiffened. He had heard the rumors, the whispers of this weapon, most dismissed it as legend, nothing more than a desperate hope. But Liu's tone brooked no argument. This was not a game. "Where is it?" A map appeared on the central screen, showing a distant star system marked in cold, sharp lines. "A lost colony world, Zeta 9. Records say it was abandoned long before the war started. We had no idea what lay there. But the archives from pre-war humanity have hidden data, and it all points to one thing: the weapon is buried there. The data is encrypted, locked behind layers of time and secrecy," Liu continued. "We need someone who can decrypt it, and who can also survive the enemy forces that'll be swarming the area. We need you, Commander." Elijah's eyes narrowed. Zeta 9, an obscure planet in the fringe of human exploration, forgotten after humanity's first exodus. How many times had he heard of these long-lost colonies, remnants of an age that felt as ancient as the stars themselves? How many times had they been written off as irrelevant, forgotten in the rush to build a future? And yet, here it was, the very thing they had been searching for, hidden in plain sight. "I'll lead the mission," he said, his voice steady but resolute. "Prepare the team. I want the best." The holograms shifted, replaced by faces of the crew who would accompany him, specialists, historians, engineers, each one a seasoned veteran of the war in their own right. They weren't just soldiers, they were survivors, like him, driven by the same relentless hope that humanity could endure. Still, his heart sank with the burden of knowing what this mission truly meant. Failure wasn't an option. Failure could mean the extinction of the human race. The journey to Zeta 9 began without ceremony. The Vanguard, a sleek vessel designed for speed and stealth, cut through the darkness of space, its engines humming like a low, constant thrum beneath their feet. As they left Earth's orbit, the crew remained silent. No words were needed. Each person knew the weight of the task ahead. Elijah stood at the helm, his fingers grazing over the control panel, his mind far from the ship. He thought of his crew, of the families on Earth waiting for a sign of hope, of his own father, another officer lost to the war. He had seen too many comrades fall. Too many promises broken. "Commander?" Mara Kessler's voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to find her standing beside him, her brow furrowed. "What is it?" "I've been going over the old records. Zeta 9 wasn't just abandoned, it was deliberately erased from history. Official reports say it was a strategic loss, but the truth is, it was wiped clean. Someone wanted it forgotten." Elijah nodded grimly. The Gorther didn't just stumble upon it. They knew something. They must have. Kessler hesitated before speaking again. And what if we're wrong? What if this weapon, this secret we're chasing, is just another dead end? Elijah's eyes hardened, his expression unchanging. Then we'll die trying. He let the words hang in the air, heavy with finality. But we can't afford to be wrong. This is it. If the weapon exists, it's our only shot. Kessler didn't respond, but the look in her eyes said everything. She understood. They all did. There was no turning back. Hours later, they arrived at Zeta 9. The planet was a desolate ball of rock, its surface pockmarked with craters and ancient ruins. The atmosphere was thin, barely breathable, but it was enough. The team landed just outside a massive complex that had once been a thriving research facility, now buried under decades of dust and decay. Stay sharp, Elijah instructed as they suited up and exited the ship. The Gorther might not know exactly where we are, but they'll be looking. We can't afford to be caught. The planet's surface was eerily quiet, the wind howling faintly through the ruins as the crew made their way through the desolate landscape. Elijah's boots crunched against the cracked ground, each step echoing in the emptiness. He glanced back at his team, each one moving with purpose, their expressions set, knowing the stakes. As they reached the entrance of the facility, a series of old security codes was entered. The door groaned open, revealing dark, cavernous halls filled with ancient technology. "I can't believe it's still here," one of the engineers murmured, awe in his voice. "This place wasn't just abandoned," Elijah said, his voice low and serious. "It was hidden." The team moved deeper into the facility, the dim light of their flashlights casting long shadows on the walls. As they traversed the silent halls, they stumbled upon a vault-like door. The locks were massive, too complex for anything less than the most advanced technology. "Ready?" Elijah asked the historian, Dr. Tessa Rowe, who had been studying ancient human artifacts for years. She nodded, pulling out a portable decryption device. "I've cracked similar systems before. This one, though, it's unlike anything I've seen." The seconds stretched as Tessa worked her magic. A soft beep echoed through the chamber, and the heavy door slowly opened. Inside, the weapon, its shape still hidden in darkness, stood silent, waiting. "Let's hope this is what we're looking for," Elijah muttered. But just as the team gathered around, preparing to study the weapon, a sudden flash of light outside the facility's walls lit up the sky. "Gorther ships, approaching fast," Mira said, her voice tight with urgency. "They know we're here." Elijah's gaze hardened. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. But it had come at a price. The weapon was just within reach, and now, they had to survive long enough to unlock its true potential. "We don't have much time. Get ready for a fight," he ordered, his voice unwavering. The real battle was about to begin. The cold, metallic scent of the facility hung in the air, mixing with the dust and decay that had settled over the once pristine research complex. Elijah Knox stood at the entrance of the vast chamber, eyes narrowed as he studied the weapon's intricate design. The door had opened, revealing the mysterious object, but the sight only raised more questions than answers. Its shape was angular, crafted from materials that seemed ancient but durable, a relic from a past humanity had long forgotten. "We found it," Dr. Tessa Rowe, the historian, whispered, awe in her voice. She had been searching for this moment for years, chasing down fragments of old records, legends passed down through generations. Now, here it was, something tangible, something that could turn the tide of the war. But even Tessa didn't know what this weapon could do. The truth had been lost to time. Elijah stepped closer, his boots echoing in the quiet space. "Can we activate it?" he asked, his voice steady, though his heart raced with the gravity of the situation. This could be humanity's last chance. Failure wasn't an option. "We can try," Tessa replied, kneeling by the weapon's central core. Her fingers brushed over the strange symbols etched into its surface, searching for some clue, some hidden trigger. "But the design, it's unlike anything we've encountered before. We may need to decipher the old encryption first." Elijah nodded. Then do it. We don't have much time. He glanced over his shoulder, his instincts flaring. The Gorther fleet was still out there, and every passing second brought them closer to the planet. They had to unlock the weapon before the enemy arrived. The rest of the team had spread out, securing the perimeter of the facility. Mira Kessler, the tactical officer, kept a close watch on the scanners, her sharp eyes darting from the screens to the dark corridors beyond. "We've got movement on the outer rim," she said, her voice tight. "2 Gorther ships. They're closing in." "Damn it," Elijah muttered, clenching his fists. "How long until they land?" "Less than an hour," Mira replied, her gaze never leaving the scanner. "They're coming in fast." Tessa's fingers flew across the holographic interface, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm getting something," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. "It's a code, an ancient sequence. But it's encrypted. I'll need a few more minutes to break it." Elijah turned toward the rest of the team. "We don't have a few minutes. We need to buy more time." Mira stepped forward. "I'll take care of it," she said, her voice steady. "I'll delay them as much as I can." "Be careful," Elijah warned. "The last thing we need is to be caught out there with no way back." "I know the stakes, Commander," Mira said with a tight smile. She wasn't afraid. She'd been through enough battles to understand what was at risk. With a nod, she moved swiftly toward the exit, her weapon drawn, her mind already on the task at hand. As she disappeared into the darkness of the facility, Elijah turned back to Tessa. The historian's hands were shaking slightly, but her resolve was firm. "How long?" he asked again. "Just a few more minutes," she replied, not looking up. "The encryption is more complex than I anticipated, but I'm close." Elijah paced the room, his mind racing. Every passing second felt like an eternity. The Gorther were relentless, and time was the one thing they couldn't afford to lose. He glanced over at the weapon again, its surface still cold and unyielding. What could it do? What kind of power was locked inside this ancient relic? A sudden explosion outside the facility jolted him from his thoughts. The ground beneath their feet trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. Myra's voice came through the comm, strained but clear. "They've landed. They're moving toward the facility. I can't hold them off for much longer." "Damn it," Elijah cursed, his pulse quickening. "Tessa, we need that weapon unlocked, now." "I'm almost there," Tessa responded, her voice breathless as she worked faster, her fingers moving with urgency. "Just a little longer." Elijah's mind raced. He knew what was coming. The Gorther were ruthless, and their technology far outmatched anything humanity had. But if this weapon was what they hoped it was, it could give them a fighting chance. More than that, it could turn the tide of the entire war. Another tremor shook the building as a second explosion rocked the outer walls. Myra's voice came again, this time with a sense of urgency that sent a chill down Elijah's spine. "They're getting closer. You have 10 minutes, Commander. Then we're out of time." "Understood," Elijah said, his voice steely. He turned to the team. "We hold them off as long as we can. No one gets through." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," they responded in unison, their faces hardening with determination. Tessa's fingers hovered over the last set of symbols, her breath shallow. "This is it," she murmured. "I'm unlocking the final code." A soft whir echoed in the room, and the weapon's core pulsed to life. The light it emitted was faint at first, like a slow heartbeat, but soon it grew brighter, bathing the room in an eerie glow. The air seemed to hum with energy, as if the weapon itself was awakening after centuries of dormancy. Elijah's breath caught in his throat. "What is that?" I think it's initializing," Tessa said, her voice tense. "It's activating, but it's not fully calibrated. The weapon is unstable." "Unstable?" Elijah repeated, a cold chill running through him. "What does that mean?" "It means it could blow everything to hell if we're not careful," Tessa replied, her eyes wide with fear. "We don't know what kind of power we're dealing with." Elijah didn't hesitate. We take the risk. We have no choice. The Gorthar are coming. The weapon's core glowed brighter now, sending pulses of energy through the room. Elijah stepped forward, his fingers brushing against the smooth surface. He could feel the hum of power beneath his fingertips, like a force waiting to be unleashed. But the uncertainty gnawed at him. What if they didn't know how to control it? What if they couldn't stop it once it started? Before he could voice his concerns, a loud crash echoed from the main entrance. Myra's voice came through the comm once again, urgent and strained. They're inside. I'm buying you all the time I can, but we need to move. Elijah's heart raced. The Gorthar were in the facility. They had mere moments before everything came crashing down. Activate it, he commanded, his voice hard. Now. Tessa nodded, her fingers moving quickly over the console. A series of complex symbols flashed across the interface, and then, nothing. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a deafening roar filled the room as the weapon's power surged outward, a blast of energy so intense that it sent Elijah crashing backward. The walls of the facility shook violently, the lights flickering. The air smelled of ozone, and the ground beneath them trembled as if the entire planet itself was quaking. What the hell? Elijah gasped, scrambling to his feet. The weapon was fully activated, its power growing uncontrollably. And somewhere in the distance, he could hear the Gorthar forces closing in. This was it. The weapon had been unlocked, but whether it would save them or destroy everything they fought for, Elijah had no idea. Get ready, he barked to the team, as the weapon's light intensified. The real fight is about to begin. The weapon hummed with a raw, unnatural power, its core glowing brighter with each passing second. Elijah could feel the pulse of energy deep within his chest, a primal force that resonated in every fiber of his being. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. The Gorthar were closing in. They knew the weapon was activated. They would stop at nothing to destroy it, and humanity along with it. Commander, Myra's voice crackled through the comm, strained but clear. We're running out of time. They're almost here. Elijah's mind raced. The energy radiating from the weapon had destabilized the facility. The walls groaned under the pressure, the lights flickering as the building itself seemed to tremble in response to the weapon's activation. A low, rumbling sound echoed from the outer perimeter, explosions from Gorthar forces breaching the outer defenses. They were already inside. Elijah, Tessa's voice broke through the chaos. It's not just a weapon. It's a beacon. It's calling them. Elijah turned toward her, his brow furrowing. What do you mean, calling them? The weapon, she said, her hands trembling as she watched the glowing core, it's not just destructive. It's sending out signals. Waves of energy. They're drawing the Gorthar in faster than I anticipated. Damn it, Elijah muttered. How long until we can turn it off? We can't, Tessa said, her voice low. It's already gone too far. We've unleashed something we can't control. A sharp crack of gunfire sounded through the comms, followed by Myra's breathless voice. They're here. It's not just a few soldiers. They've sent everything they've got. Elijah's pulse quickened. The battle outside the facility was already in full swing. His mind raced with calculations. How long would it take for the Gorthar to overwhelm their position? Minutes, maybe less. They had no more time. We hold them off, Elijah said, his voice steady despite the rising panic inside him. Get the rest of the team out. We need to survive long enough for this weapon to finish whatever it's doing. He moved toward the weapon, his fingers brushing the now hot surface. Its energy was unlike anything he had ever encountered. It vibrated under his touch, a tangible force, almost sentient. He could feel it calling to him, pulling at the deepest parts of his being. He didn't understand it, but he didn't need to. He had one task, to survive, to protect humanity. Commander, Myra's voice came through again, urgent. I've secured the escape route. We need to move, now. Elijah gave one last glance at the weapon. There was no turning back. The Gorthar were on their way, and their army was vast. But this weapon, this ancient, forgotten power, was humanity's last hope. If it worked, if it could do what they hoped, it could erase the Gorthar's advantage and shift the balance of the war in their favor. If it didn't, he shoved the thoughts aside. Lead the way, he ordered. We fight until the end. The team moved with precision, sprinting toward the escape route Mira had secured. The corridors felt like a maze, a twisting path through the facility's darkened halls. The thrum of energy from the weapons seemed to follow them, an ever-present hum that filled the air, the sound of inevitability. Elijah's heart pounded in his chest, each step a desperate rush against time. The Gorthar were getting closer. He could feel the rumble of their heavy footsteps through the ground. There would be no escaping without a fight. They reached the main exit, a set of reinforced doors designed to withstand any assault. But as they stepped out into the open, Elijah's eyes immediately locked on the scene unfolding before him. The Gorthar army had already assembled outside. Their sleek, black ships hovered ominously above the ruins of the facility, their red lights scanning the terrain. Foot soldiers, tall and imposing, marched in tight formations, their weapons drawn and ready. The battle had begun, and they were outnumbered, horribly. Take positions. Elijah barked, his voice a command that brooked no argument. We're not going down without a fight. The team split, moving into cover behind scattered debris. Mira and the others set up defensive positions, their weapons aimed at the approaching Gorthar forces. Elijah crouched beside Tessa, who was visibly shaken but determined. Can you still deactivate it? Elijah asked, his tone tight with urgency. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. We've triggered something we can't control. It's too powerful. We can't shut it off. It's already begun. Then we ride this out, Elijah said, his jaw clenched. We make sure humanity survives this. Just as the Gorthar made their first assault, a high-pitched shriek filled the air, followed by a burst of energy that tore through the Gorthar lines like a storm. Elijah's eyes widened as the blast seemed to pulse outward from the weapon, a massive shockwave that sent Gorthar soldiers flying. The ground beneath their feet trembled as a cascade of raw power erupted from the facility. What the hell? Mira shouted, her voice tinged with disbelief. The weapon, it was responding, reacting with a force far beyond anything they had expected. The Gorthar forces, momentarily stunned, scrambled to regroup, their advanced technology seemingly useless in the face of this ancient power. A new realization hit Elijah, this wasn't just a weapon. It was a force of nature. And it was fighting for humanity. Elijah, look! Tessa cried out, pointing toward the horizon. The sky above them was burning with streaks of light, and the Gorthar fleet was being torn apart. Ships exploded mid-air, their hulls crumpling under the intense energy emanating from the weapon. It was as if the very fabric of reality was bending under the onslaught. We've done it, Elijah murmured, his voice filled with awe. The weapon was destroying the Gorthar fleet. It was more than they had hoped for. More than they could ever imagine. It was as if humanity's forgotten history had just come alive to defend them. The ground shook beneath their feet as the weapon's pulse intensified, sending shockwaves out in every direction. The Gorthar were reeling, unable to fight back. But Elijah knew this wouldn't last forever. The weapon's power was finite. They had to move. They had to finish the fight. Get back to the ship, Elijah ordered. We've won this battle, but there's still a war to fight. We need to make sure this weapon doesn't fall into the wrong hands. The team moved quickly, their steps purposeful. The Gorthar forces were retreating, disorganized, their ships burning in the sky above. As they boarded the Vanguard, Elijah looked back at the ruins of the facility, the weapon that had saved them, the ancient power that had unlocked humanity's final chance. As the ship ascended into the sky, the battle behind them receding into the distance, Elijah allowed himself a moment of relief. But only a moment. The war was far from over. They had won this day, but the future was still uncertain. And whatever lay ahead, Elijah knew one thing: humanity had found its ultimate weapon. And it was just the beginning.